when I think back to my Irish childhood or my Irish teenage years, I think most people might have similar memories of key years of maybe 11 to 15 or 16 when you are on the cusp of starting to become an adult, or that transition of that phase of your life where you're making loads of friends, you're becoming your own person. I mean, I think every Irish child will remember, like, you play in little groups on the green, you are starting to go with different groups of people, you know, go out on your own, you're starting to, maybe you want to come back a bit later, you want to not do everything your parents tell you to do. And those are really kind of key years when you think back to how you interacted with people when you were young. When I think about myself, not that I didn't have those memories, but my own experience of that was very different because I was born with mild cerebral palsy. And what that means is it's a partial physical disability, which just affected my walking, my balance, and pretty much all of my movement, particularly when I was young. So what that meant was that I spent a lot of those formative years having what would really be considered life-changing surgery. So it would be, you would spend weeks in cast, you would have pretty serious surgeries where, you know, they would maybe snip the tendons and you'd have to literally learn to walk again. And generally these recovery periods would take place over a number of weeks or months, and usually the summer. So when everybody was off school, everyone looked forward to those 3 months where you would have your freedom to do whatever you wanted. I never had a lot of that, or at least I don't have any overriding memories of that. The main memories that I have are like literally being spent on the couch in our living room from my thigh to my toes in cast, stretched out, not able to weight bear, not able to get up, not able to do anything really, watch TV or watch film. And certainly I remember particularly hearing everybody kind of playing outside and just not being able to enter into that world or that part of my childhood where you should be carefree and you should just be excited for what's, you know, coming ahead and not really thinking any further than the summer. And because I didn't have that outlet, for me, films became that outlet.
When you rent or buy a video, you need to know that the film you choose is suitable for the audience at home.
So when I think back to my earliest memory of film, it's not actually a film, it's the theme tune of a film, and it's the theme song to Pulp Fiction, Misirlou by Dick Dale, which is what makes me think about every other film experience I've ever had. That memory is triggered because of my dad. We are different in a lot of ways, but the one way we are really similar is through our love of film. My dad really nurtured that. So when I think about that memory of that particular theme song, and it's iconic, everybody knows that theme tune, it isn't even that kicked in right away. It's, if those of you who would have the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, it's actually the spot of dialogue that happens just before Misirlou kicks in. So it's Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer, and they're just about to rob the diner. No spoilers, that happens right at the start. And what I remember in particular is the curse, like the really loud cursing of Amanda Plummer. My dad would play it on like those really 90s stereos, you know, where it was high tech at the time, but now you would say, oh, they got that in the 90s. He would play it really loudly every Saturday morning, like most Saturday mornings, and I would wake up to that, Amanda Plummer telling everyone not to effing move. And my mother would be yelling, "Will you stop the kids?" You know, because we were only about, I'd say I was only about 8 or 9 at the time. And at that time, I probably hadn't even seen Pulp Fiction, the film, but I remember seeing the famous poster of Uma Thurman on the soundtrack cover and hearing that song. And I think my dad in particular recognised that film was an outlet for me because I felt lonely a lot of the time, and I don't think at the time you could recognise that as loneliness. Thinking back on it now, it was solitary. Those weeks and months were solitary. My parents were there, but my twin sister, for example, she got to do what I didn't get to do, which was to go out and spend those key years kind of trying to make friends, and there'd be different boys that you might like up on the green and everybody would talk about it. And I don't remember a lot of that. And I think in some other way, my dad and my mum, but in particular my dad, really recognised that the coping mechanism I had for that was to use film, and they really nurtured that in particular. So really I always like to say to people that Quentin Tarantino started off the whole thing. And my dad, I must have only been about 10 when I saw Pulp Fiction. I was only at maybe 11 or 12 when I saw Reservoir Dogs. Again, I'm way too young to have seen these things, but what I remember isn't necessarily the films. I remember my dad saying, okay, well, don't look at this bit. It's okay, you can look at this bit in Reservoir Dogs because they don't show the ear cutting on camera. I remember those bits. It was my dad that showed me Jackie Brown, my favourite Tarantino film, and it was my dad who rented Kill Bill on DVD for me to watch because I was only 15 at the time. And that was the start of it. Then I really felt as I got older, and not that old, but I really only stopped having those kind of surgeries, those life-altering surgeries at 21. And I think I felt at the time that I missed a lot of life experience just by not having those smaller singular moments throughout my childhood. I missed a lot. There was a gap there that I hadn't been able to bridge. And basically what I did then was I learned about life through the movies. It was through almost all the films that have made an impact on me, whether it was My Left Foot or The Sea Inside, two of the earliest films that depict disability, again, shown to me by my dad. They were all shown to me by my parents. And I hadn't seen myself on screen in particular, but those two films, the same director who did The Sea Inside also did Open Your Eyes, and the remake of that was Cameron Crowe's Vanilla Sky, and that deals with disability in a more kind of in another way. And it also dealt with the loneliness theme, or having to feel that you want to change who you are to, in his case, to be with the woman he loved. And everything up to that point that I felt I had missed, I was going to get through film. So whether it was The Bridges of Madison County, or even kind of to a strange extent, Aliens or Terminator, I think what really appealed to me without knowing it at that stage was that here's another world. Here is another way for you to get out of the reality that you're in, which when you're young like that isn't the nicest way to be. It was saying there's something outside of surgery and operations and cerebral palsy, and feeling like you're left out of it. I felt that I was an equal when I watched films. I was just like everybody else. And that, I think, is what made the world of film so enticing. And to this day as an adult, I still feel that way. I still feel that I'm waiting for a lot of big moments that maybe I haven't got in my life, and I still use kind of film as that kind of outlet, that it's going to be okay because whatever I feel I don't have or I want to learn about. So, for example, Tarantino, the nuances of the smaller things in life, whether you tip a waitress or two hitmen are on their way to work to presumably blow the sky away, but they're talking about different burgers you can get in different countries. Those films taught me to look at the smaller things as a writer, that kind of detail. And even when it comes to filmmakers like David Lynch or Baz Luhrmann, what they do is they literally pull back a curtain. Baz Luhrmann's Red Curtain trilogy does that. David Lynch in Blue Velvet, in Twin Peaks, they literally pull back a curtain and invite you in. And for me, that was always the strongest allure of film. It said I was just the same as everyone else in the audience, and there was nothing that made me feel other. Because the cerebral palsy does make me feel other. It does make me feel like I'm almost one step behind everybody else. And film in many ways, it isn't just something there for entertainment. It is an incredible educational tool. The Sea Inside is a foreign film. I think it's a Spanish-Chilean film, and any kind of other foreign films that I watch, like Between Two Worlds was a recent one. They all expand knowledge that I wouldn't have had or felt I couldn't have in the bubble that I had when I was young. In those formative years, like those years are key, and you don't really think they are, but I never had a time where I felt carefree that I remember when I was young. I never felt there was a time when I didn't worry about the bigger things in life, like would I be able to walk again? Would I be able to be independent without the use of a wheelchair? And for years I was told by surgeons, if you don't have this surgery, you won't be able to walk or X, Y, Z. I always say to people, like, God, I wish I could lighten up a bit more, or why do I have to take everything so seriously? But looking back on it, there was never any other option. I never got to have those times in my life where I could just say, hell, throw all caution to the wind and not think about tomorrow or consequences of that, because I had to think about tomorrow. I had to think of, well, if you don't do this, you're going to fall, or this is not going to be safe, or you can't do this because you'll hurt yourself this way. I think with film, I never had to worry about that. It was even from the get-go. I don't have the life I probably would have wanted for myself because of the cerebral palsy. And it's taken me a long time to admit that to myself, that I could have had a different life, I think. And I'm still trying to bridge that gap as an adult and maybe chase or wait for big moments that I don't have. But in the meantime, I can find all that out at the movies.
Tastiest movie deal in town, the Big Movie Night Takeaway. Rent any 2 movies from our huge range in store and get a bottle of Coke, twin tubs of Häagen-Dazs, a scrummy bag of Maltesers, and a fresh popcorn. Plus, you get to keep the movies for an extra 2 nights free, giving you 4.
The little things. There's nothing bigger, is there?
Late Night Movie returns following these messages.